A belső szépség és az érzelmi intelligencia nem kézzelfogható fogalmak.
Inner beauty and emotional intelligence are intangible concepts. Inner beauty and emotional intelligence are intangible concepts.
Élvezem azoknak az embereknek a társaságát, akiknek mindenhez, amit csak tesznek, gyakorlatias a hozzáállása.
I enjoy the company of people with a down-to-earth approach to everything they do. I enjoy the company of people with a down-to-earth approach to everything they do.
Alternatív terápiát alkalmaznak számos testi panaszra.
Alternative therapies are applied to numerous kinds of physical complaints. Alternative therapies are applied to numerous kinds of physical complaints.
Határozott javulást látok abban, ahogy Gregory a nehéz helyzeteket kezeli.
I can see a definite improvement in the way Gregory handles difficult situations. I can see a definite improvement in the way Gregory handles difficult situations.
Vannak emberek, akik nem hajlandóak kompromisszumokat kötni, különösen ha az a komfortzónájukból való kilépést jelenti.
Some people are not willing to make compromises, especially when it involves stepping out of their comfort zones. Some people are not willing to make compromises, especially when it involves stepping out of their comfort zones.
Az újonnan felbukkanó okosórák számos potenciális vásárló figyelmét megragadták.
The newly emerging smartwatches have captured the attention of several potential customers. The newly emerging smartwatches have captured the attention of several potential customers.
El kell ismernem, hogy kifogytam az ötletekből.
I have to acknowledge that I have run out of ideas. I have to acknowledge that I have run out of ideas.
Valójában szeretném kiemelni az adományok fontosságát.
As a matter of fact, I want to highlight the importance of donations. As a matter of fact, I want to highlight the importance of donations.
Amikor a kötelességeink teljesítéséről van szó, nem mindig vagyunk olyan lelkesek azok elvégzésével kapcsolatban.
When it comes to fulfilling our duties, we are not always enthusiastic about doing them. When it comes to fulfilling our duties, we are not always enthusiastic about doing them.
A közösségi média betekintést ad más emberek életébe.
Social media gives an insight into other people's lives. Social media gives an insight into other people's lives.
Nem akarom, hogy befolyásoljon a döntésemben.
I don't want him to influence me in my decision. I don't want him to influence me in my decision.
Ez az eset messze felháborítóbb, mint ahogy mondták.
This incident is far more outrageous than they told us. This incident is far more outrageous than they told us.
A halogatás csak felhalmozza a problémáidat.
Procrastination only makes your problems pile up. Procrastination only makes your problems pile up.
Nem kétséges, hogy a pozitív gondolkodás javíthatja az egészséged.
Positive thinking can, undoubtedly, improve your health. Positive thinking can, undoubtedly, improve your health.
Megkért, hogy az ő nevében is kérjek bocsánatot.
He asked me to apologize on his behalf, too. He asked me to apologize on his behalf, too.
Olivia mostanában túlságosan el volt foglalva a lovával.
Olivia has been too distracted by her horse recently. Olivia has been too distracted by her horse recently.
A boltban vásárolt kenyér össze sem hasonlítható a házilag készített verziókkal.
Store-bought bread is not comparable to homemade versions. Store-bought bread is not comparable to homemade versions.
Minden fontos szó a kifejezésekben félkövérrel van jelölve.
All the important words in the phrases are in bold. All the important words in the phrases are in bold.
Liam egy tisztességes és hűséges férfi, aki még a karrierjét is feláldozná a családjáért.
Liam is a decent and faithful man who would sacrifice even his career for his family. Liam is a decent and faithful man who would sacrifice even his career for his family.
Ez a generáció már függőjévé vált a gyors éttermi ételek fogyasztásának.
This generation has become addicted to consuming junk food. This generation has become addicted to consuming junk food.
A szavaid nagy része visszatükrözi a gondolataidat.
Most of the words you say reflect your thoughts. Most of the words you say reflect your thoughts.
Az amerikai kórházakban a betegek kollagénben gazdag gyümölcskocsonyát kapnak, hogy gyorsabban felépüljenek.
Patients in American hospitals get collagen-rich fruit jelly to recover faster. Patients in American hospitals get collagen-rich fruit jelly to recover faster.
Nem véletlenül mondják azt az emberek, hogy ki mint vet, úgy arat.
It is not by chance that people say you reap what you sow. It is not by chance that people say you reap what you sow.
Soha nem is álmodhattam volna egy elkötelezettebb és precízebb lektorról, mint Judith, akinek a segítsége felbecsülhetetlen volt számomra az elmúlt pár hónapban.
I could never have dreamed of a more committed and meticulous proofreader than Judith, whose help has been priceless for me in the last few months. I could never have dreamed of a more committed and meticulous proofreader than Judith, whose help has been priceless for me in the last few months.
Rebecca és Sam élvezik jól megérdemelt és már régen várt nyaralásukat Új-Zélandon.
Rebecca and Sam are enjoying their well-deserved and long-awaited vacation in New Zealand. Rebecca and Sam are enjoying their well-deserved and long-awaited vacation in New Zealand.
Csak szeretnék dióhéjban újra összefoglalni mindent.
I only want to summarize everything again in a nutshell. I only want to summarize everything again in a nutshell.
A művészeten keresztül az emberek szabadon kifejezhetik a legmélyebb érzelmeiket.
People can freely express their deepest feelings through art. People can freely express their deepest feelings through art.
Egy bevásárlókörút a nehézségekkel való megküzdésnek egy egészségtelen módja.
A shopping spree is an unhealthy way of coping with hardships. A shopping spree is an unhealthy way of coping with hardships.
Tudod, hogy miért utalnak Chicagóra mindig úgy, mint a szeles városra?
Do you know why Chicago is always referred to as the Windy City? Do you know why Chicago is always referred to as the Windy City?
A legelején kételkedőek voltak mindennel kapcsolatban, amit hallottak.
At the very beginning, they were skeptical about everything they heard. At the very beginning, they were skeptical about everything they heard.
Marjorie minden idejét arra szánta, hogy megismerkedjen a mexikói konyhával.
Marjorie devoted all her time to familiarizing herself with the Mexican cuisine. Marjorie devoted all her time to familiarizing herself with the Mexican cuisine.
A böjt hatása gyakran vitatott kérdés manapság.
The effects of fasting is a frequently discussed issue these days. The effects of fasting is a frequently discussed issue these days.
Tudnál néhány esetet említeni, amikor a szélsőséges időjárási viszonyok emberek életét befolyásolták?
Can you mention some cases when people's lives have been affected by extreme weather conditions? Can you mention some cases when people's lives have been affected by extreme weather conditions?
A folyamatos tanulás stimulálja az elmét és bővíti a tudást.
Continuous learning stimulates the mind and broadens one's knowledge. Continuous learning stimulates the mind and broadens one's knowledge.
Lindsay elment, még mielőtt bármit is elmagyarázhattunk volna.
Lindsay had left even before we could have explained anything. Lindsay had left even before we could have explained anything.
A Waldorf olyan tanítási módszer, amelynek segítségével a diákok szabadon fedezhetik fel, és használhatják kreativitásukat és képzelőerejüket.
Waldorf is a teaching method whereby students are free to explore and use their creativity and imagination. Waldorf is a teaching method whereby students are free to explore and use their creativity and imagination.
Amikor a húgom kapott egy kihagyhatatlan lehetőséget, hogy a New York-i Juilliardon tanuljon, azonnal elfogadta.
When my younger sister got a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to study at Juilliard in New York, she immediately accepted it. When my younger sister got a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to study at Juilliard in New York, she immediately accepted it.
Korábban kellett volna tisztáznunk a dolgokat, de még van elég időnk, hogy megoldjuk a problémát.
We should have clarified things earlier, but we still have enough time to solve the problem. We should have clarified things earlier, but we still have enough time to solve the problem.
Amikor Sharon megkapja a saját lovát, bármikor lovagolhatja majd, amikor csak akarja.
When Sharon gets her own horse, she will be allowed to ride it whenever she wants to. When Sharon gets her own horse, she will be allowed to ride it whenever she wants to.
Fel sem tudom fogni, mekkora áldás lehet neki, hogy egy ilyen nagyszerű közösség része.
I can't comprehend what a blessing it must be for her to be part of such an amazing community. I can't comprehend what a blessing it must be for her to be part of such an amazing community.
Ha hatékony akarsz lenni, rangsorolnod kell a feladataidat.
If you want to be efficient, you need to prioritize your tasks. If you want to be efficient, you need to prioritize your tasks.
A joghurtba kevert aszalgyümölcsök és magok akkora energiatöltetet adnak neki, hogy nem tudja abba hagyni a munkát.
Yogurt mixed with dried fruits and seeds gives her such an energy boost that she can't stop working. Yogurt mixed with dried fruits and seeds gives her such an energy boost that she can't stop working.
Világszerte nagyjából 6 fő világvallás van.
Roughly, there are 6 major world religions in the world. Roughly, there are 6 major world religions in the world.
Olyan megoldást kell találnunk, amelyet hosszú távon fent tudunk tartani.
We must find a solution that we can sustain in the long run. We must find a solution that we can sustain in the long run.
Csak akkor fognak a helyi hatóságok cselekedni, amikor a helyzet rosszabbodni kezd.
Only when the situation gets worse will the local authorities begin to act. Only when the situation gets worse will the local authorities begin to act.
Nem kell most vezetned, ha túlságosan kimerült vagy.
You don't need to be driving now if you are too exhausted. You don't need to be driving now if you are too exhausted.
Az utasok még a gép leszállása után is rémültek voltak a légörvény miatt.
The passengers were terrified because of the turbulence, even after the plane had landed. The passengers were terrified because of the turbulence, even after the plane had landed.
Legelőször 1905-ben Manhattanben kezdtek el pizzát árulni az USA-ban.
Pizza in the USA started to be sold for the first time in Manhattan in 1905. Pizza in the USA started to be sold for the first time in Manhattan in 1905.
Gyakorlatilag korlátlan mennyiségű információhoz juthatsz az interneten keresztül.
You can access virtually limitless amounts of information on the internet. You can access virtually limitless amounts of information on the internet.
Az érvei nagyon meggyőzőek, bár nem mindig értek velük egyet.
His arguments are very persuasive, although I don't always agree with them. His arguments are very persuasive, although I don't always agree with them.
A fiatalabb generáció néhány tagja nem tud különbséget tenni a valós élet és a tévében látott képzeletbeli világ között.
Some members of the younger generation cannot distinguish between real life and the world of fiction on TV. Some members of the younger generation cannot distinguish between real life and the world of fiction on TV.
A verseny alatt semmilyen körülmények között nem hagyhatják el a versenyzők a helyszínt.
Under no circumstances are contestants permitted to leave the premises during the competition. Under no circumstances are contestants permitted to leave the premises during the competition.
Miután kifizették a tartozásaikat, elkezdtek gyűjteni egy nyaralóra.
After they had paid off their debts, they started to save for a summer house. After they had paid off their debts, they started to save for a summer house.
Lehet, hogy válaszolt az e-mailemre, már nem emlékszem.
He might have answered my email. I can't remember anymore. He might have answered my email. I can't remember anymore.
Nagy ellentmondás van a két gyanúsított állítása között.
There is a huge contradiction between the two suspects' statements. There is a huge contradiction between the two suspects' statements.
Most nem gyomlálhatnak a kertben. Épp most láttam őket a vonatállomáson.
They can't be weeding in the garden now. I have just seen them at the train station. They can't be weeding in the garden now. I have just seen them at the train station.
Az árvíz ellenére használták az emberek az autóikat a hurrikán után.
Despite the flood, people were using their cars after the hurricane. Despite the flood, people were using their cars after the hurricane.
Egy teljes lista készült az egyiptomi résztvevőkről.
A complete list of the Egyptian participants has been made. A complete list of the Egyptian participants has been made.
A boldog pár az esküvő utáni napon indult el nászútra.
The happy couple left for their honeymoon the day after their wedding. The happy couple left for their honeymoon the day after their wedding.
A polgármester meg van győződve róla, hogy a döntése kedvező volt az egész városnak.
The mayor is convinced that his decision has been favorable for the whole town. The mayor is convinced that his decision has been favorable for the whole town.
Hank elég tapasztalatot gyűjtött az évek folyamán ahhoz, hogy hamarosan elindíthassa saját startup cégét.
Hank has gathered enough experience through the years to launch his own startup company soon. Hank has gathered enough experience through the years to launch his own startup company soon.
A vezetők határozottan elítélik a környéken épülő új síparadicsom ötletét.
The leaders strongly disapprove of the idea of building another ski resort in the area. The leaders strongly disapprove of the idea of building another ski resort in the area.
Nem kellett volna a dátumot módosítaniuk, mivel a szeptember 1-je tökéletes lett volna mindenkinek.
They needn't have modified the date, since the 1st of September would have been perfect for everybody. They needn't have modified the date, since the 1st of September would have been perfect for everybody.
Mivel újdonsült házasok, nagyon szerelmesek egymásba.
Being newlyweds, they are in love with each other very much. Being newlyweds, they are in love with each other very much.
A tegnapi napot kivéve egy alkalomra sem emlékszem, hogy estéi ruhában láttalak.
Apart from yesterday, I can't remember an instance when I saw you in an evening dress. Apart from yesterday, I can't remember an instance when I saw you in an evening dress.
Sandra és Antonio gépe szinte egy időben szállt fel, de különböző irányba.
Sandra's and Antonio's planes took off almost simultaneously, but in different directions. Sandra's and Antonio's planes took off almost simultaneously, but in different directions.
Ha bölcsen tudod a saját idődet beosztani, képes leszel segíteni nekünk is ebben az ügyben.
If you can manage your own time wisely, you will also be able to help us in this matter. If you can manage your own time wisely, you will also be able to help us in this matter.
Egyetlen egy ember sem emlékezett a széf kódjára.
Not a single person remembered the code of the safe. Not a single person remembered the code of the safe.
Ezeknek az amatőr úszóknak minden képességük megvan, ami profikká minősíthetné őket.
These amateur swimmers have all the skills that would qualify them to be professional ones. These amateur swimmers have all the skills that would qualify them to be professional ones.
A múlt héten ilyenkor Andrew a bőröngyét pakolta a tájvani nyaralására készülve.
This time last week, Andrew was packing his suitcase for his holiday in Taiwan. This time last week, Andrew was packing his suitcase for his holiday in Taiwan.
A munkahelyére való vezetés közben mindig a kedvenc dalait hallgatja, hogy jobb kedve legyen.
While driving to work, she always listens to her favorite songs to cheer up. While driving to work, she always listens to her favorite songs to cheer up.
Azt szeretném, ha elvégeznél egy időigényes, de kifizetődő munkát.
What I would like you to do is a time-consuming but rewarding job. What I would like you to do is a time-consuming but rewarding job.
A reggeli időszakban vagyok a leghatékonyabb a munkahelyemen.
The time when I am the most productive at work is morning. The time when I am the most productive at work is morning.
Nem érdeklődtünk a magánélete felől, mert túl udvariatlan lett volna.
We didn't inquire about his private life because it would have been too impolite. We didn't inquire about his private life because it would have been too impolite.
Beállítanál kérlek egy emlékeztetőt, hogy ne felejts el megvásárolni mindent a búcsúpartira?
Would you please set a reminder not to forget to purchase everything for the farewell party? Would you please set a reminder not to forget to purchase everything for the farewell party?
A barátaim már minden dél-amerikai országba ellátogattak, kivéve Chilét.
My friends have visited all South American countries except for Chile. My friends have visited all South American countries except for Chile.
Az indonéziai éhínségről szóló hírek lesújtóak voltak, így azonnal cselekednünk kellett.
The news about the famine in Indonesia were overwhelming, so we had to act immediately. The news about the famine in Indonesia were overwhelming, so we had to act immediately.
Ha van még egy kis időd, akár egy kávézót is kereshetünk.
If you have some more time, we might as well look for a coffee shop. If you have some more time, we might as well look for a coffee shop.
A hőmérséklet az Egyenlítő mentén Afrikában többnyire 35 Celsius fok fölött van, míg az északi sarkon alig éri el a 15 fokot.
Temperatures along the equator in Africa are mostly above 35 degrees Celsius in the summer, whereas they barely reach 15 degrees at the North Pole. Temperatures along the equator in Africa are mostly above 35 degrees Celsius in the summer, whereas they barely reach 15 degrees at the North Pole.
A webináriumok kiváló lehetőséget adnak a tudásod frissen tartására anélkül, hogy elhagynád az otthonod.
Webinars give you an excellent opportunity to keep your knowledge up to date without leaving your home. Webinars give you an excellent opportunity to keep your knowledge up to date without leaving your home.
Ha nem lett volna az a nagy eső múlt héten, el tudtuk volna kezdeni a tölgyfák ültetését.
But for the heavy rain that fell last week, we would have been able to start planting the oak trees. But for the heavy rain that fell last week, we would have been able to start planting the oak trees.
Az emberek nagy része nagyon zavarónak tartja az autóban a mobiltelefon használatát.
The majority of people find the use of cell phones in a car very distracting. The majority of people find the use of cell phones in a car very distracting.
Abban a percben felhívlak, amint kilépek az épületből.
I'll call you the minute I step out of the building. I'll call you the minute I step out of the building.
Ez volt a második alkalom, hogy a tengeren túlra utaztunk.
It was the second time we had traveled overseas. It was the second time we had traveled overseas.
Rose tudni akarta, hogy bejelentettük-e már az eljegyzésünket.
Rose wanted to know if we had announced our engagement yet. Rose wanted to know if we had announced our engagement yet.
Megkérdeztek minket, hogy miért nem akarjuk kipróbálni a vízisíjelést.
They asked us why we didn't want to try water skiing. They asked us why we didn't want to try water skiing.
Az emberi kapcsolatok kiemelkedően fontosak egy ember érzelmi jólétéhez.
Human relationships are of critical importance for an individual's emotional well-being. Human relationships are of critical importance for an individual's emotional well-being.
Martin kosárlabda edzője rendszerint engedékeny, kivéve ha tudja, hogy valami nem előnyös a fiú fejlődése szempontjából.
Martin's basketball coach is normally permissive, except when he knows something is not beneficial for the boy's progress. Martin's basketball coach is normally permissive, except when he knows something is not beneficial for the boy's progress.
Egyikőjük sem fiatalkorú, szóval már szavazhatnak.
None of them are underage, so they can already vote. None of them are underage, so they can already vote.
Liechtensteinben lehetőséged lesz olyan építészekkel együttműködni, akikkel korábban még soha nem dolgoztál.
In Liechtenstein, you will have the chance to cooperate with architects you have never worked with before. In Liechtenstein, you will have the chance to cooperate with architects you have never worked with before.
Meglepődve jöttem rá, hogy mennyi külföldi tanul ezen az egyetemen.
I was surprised to find out how many foreigners study at this university. I was surprised to find out how many foreigners study at this university.
Amanda jó előre szólt nekem, hogy mikor jön, hogy tudjak egy tervvel készülni.
Amanda told me well in advance when she would be coming so that I could prepare a plan. Amanda told me well in advance when she would be coming so that I could prepare a plan.
Az orvos biztosította a pácienst afelől, hogy nincs oka aggodalomra.
The doctor reassured the patient that she has nothing to worry about. The doctor reassured the patient that she has nothing to worry about.
A szőke haj és kék szem gyakori jellemzők a skandináv országokban.
Blonde hair and blue eyes are common features in Scandinavian countries. Blonde hair and blue eyes are common features in Scandinavian countries.
A festményein használt színek változatossága nagyon látványos.
The variety of colors that he uses in his paintings is spectacular. The variety of colors that he uses in his paintings is spectacular.
Ami a találkozó helyet illeti, a legközelebb található hely mellett kellene döntenünk.
As far as the venue is concerned, we should opt for the closest place we can find. As far as the venue is concerned, we should opt for the closest place we can find.
Megígérem, hogy készen leszek, mire visszajössz.
I promise I'll be ready by the time you get back. I promise I'll be ready by the time you get back.
Abban az esetben, ha megújítják a vízumomat, addig tudnék annál a cégnél dolgozni, ameddig csak szükségük van rám.
Provided my visa is renewed, I could work for that company as long as they need me. Provided my visa is renewed, I could work for that company as long as they need me.
Nem valószínű, hogy az eredmény jelentős mértékben fogja végső döntésünket befolyásolni.
It is unlikely that the result will significantly influence us in our final decision. It is unlikely that the result will significantly influence us in our final decision.
Aaron megkönnyebbült, hogy a lehető legtöbbet tette meg a csapatáért.
Aaron was relieved that he did the best he could for his team. Aaron was relieved that he did the best he could for his team.
Bizonyíték nélkül nem tudják őt letartóztatni.
Without any evidence, they cannot arrest him. Without any evidence, they cannot arrest him.
Mióta szabadúszó vagyok, olyan személyes szabadságot élek meg, amit nem tapasztaltam korábban.
Working as a freelancer has allowed me to experience a personal freedom I didn't know before. Working as a freelancer has allowed me to experience a personal freedom I didn't know before.
Próbálom kitalálni, hogy mi más tehetnék még, hogy segítsek neki.
I am trying to find out what else I could do to help her. I am trying to find out what else I could do to help her.
Amíg megpróbálom megérteni, hogy miért viselkedik így, támogatom Johnsont a tanulmányaiban.
While trying to understand why he behaves this way, I support Johnson in his studies. While trying to understand why he behaves this way, I support Johnson in his studies.
Az óriási gyémántgyűrű, amit viselt, nagyon szembetűnő volt.
The huge diamond ring that she was wearing was very eye-catching. The huge diamond ring that she was wearing was very eye-catching.
Madridi születésű lány, de élete nagy részét a Közel-Keleten töltötte.
She is a Madrid-born girl, but she has spent most of her life in the Middle East. She is a Madrid-born girl, but she has spent most of her life in the Middle East.
Az iskola csak azoknak tud információt adni, akik részt vesznek a cserediák programban.
The school can only give information to those taking part in the student exchange program. The school can only give information to those taking part in the student exchange program.
Soha nem volt még ilyen meleg fogadtatásban részük a Hawaii tartózkodásuk alatt.
They have never encountered such a warm welcome throughout their stay in Hawaii. They have never encountered such a warm welcome throughout their stay in Hawaii.
Át tudnátok kérlek nézni a 6. fejezet hátralévő részét?
Could you please revise the remaining part of Chapter 6? Could you please revise the remaining part of Chapter 6?
Naponta legalább 10 percet kell a napon feküdnöd, hogy elegendő mennyiségű D-vitaminhoz juss.
You need to lie for at least 10 minutes a day in the sun to get a sufficient amount of vitamin D. You need to lie for at least 10 minutes a day in the sun to get a sufficient amount of vitamin D.
Az európai gondolkodásmód milyen területeken különbözik az ázsiaitól?
In what areas is the European way of thinking different from the Asian one? In what areas is the European way of thinking different from the Asian one?
Mennyi ideje használtad utoljára a biciklidet?
How long is it since you last used your bike? How long is it since you last used your bike?
A kitartása nélkül nem lett volna képes eljutni az olimpiáig.
Without his perseverance, he wouldn't have been able to make it to the Olympics. Without his perseverance, he wouldn't have been able to make it to the Olympics.
Egy vígjáték megnézése legalább olyan stresszoldó lehet, mint egy nap túrázás a hegyekben.
Watching a comedy can be at least as stress-relieving as hiking in the mountains for a day. Watching a comedy can be at least as stress-relieving as hiking in the mountains for a day.
Csak színleltem, hogy az utolsó konferencia minden részletét ismerem.
I was only pretending to know all the details of the last conference. I was only pretending to know all the details of the last conference.
Az általános vélekedéssel ellentétben az olyan emberi értékeket, mint például az együttérzés és a hála, még mindig számos kultúrában értékelik.
Contrary to general belief, human values like compassion and gratitude are still appreciated in many modern cultures. Contrary to general belief, human values like compassion and gratitude are still appreciated in many modern cultures.
Nem szándékozlak fölöslegesen terhelni, így a hétvége után is beadhatod az eszédet.
I don't intend to place a burden on you unnecessarily, so you can hand in your essay after the weekend. I don't intend to place a burden on you unnecessarily, so you can hand in your essay after the weekend.
Tudom, hogy a fiúnak tiszták a szándékai. Mégsem akarom, hogy a lányom járjon vele.
I know the boy's intentions are pure, but I still don't want my daughter to go out with him. I know the boy's intentions are pure, but I still don't want my daughter to go out with him.
A közönség végül megértette, hogy a kutató mit is akart mondani.
The audience eventually understood what the researcher was trying to say. The audience eventually understood what the researcher was trying to say.
Borzasztóan sajnáljuk a hotelünk által okozott kellemetlenséget.
We are terribly sorry about the inconvenience our hotel has caused. We are terribly sorry about the inconvenience our hotel has caused.
Meg kellene fontolnunk, hogy megvizsgáljuk a tegnap felmerült kérdés mindkét oldalát.
We should consider looking into both sides of the issue that came up yesterday. We should consider looking into both sides of the issue that came up yesterday.
A sajtó bármilyen témában is ad közzé információt, az gyakran eltorzítja, hogy lenyűgözze a közönségét.
Information provided by the press on any subject is often distorted to impress the audience. Information provided by the press on any subject is often distorted to impress the audience.
A súlyemelés be van építve a napi rutinodba.
Is weightlifting incorporated into your daily routine? Is weightlifting incorporated into your daily routine?
Az új görög étterem tulajdonosának kivételesen kifinomult ízlése van.
The owner of the new Greek restaurant has an exceptionally exquisite taste. The owner of the new Greek restaurant has an exceptionally exquisite taste.
Kiemelkedően fontos első helyre tenni az árvák helyzetét.
It is of extreme importance to prioritize the situation of the orphans. It is of extreme importance to prioritize the situation of the orphans.
Rendszeres gyakorlással kombinálva figyelemre méltó eredményeket tudsz majd elérni ezzel az új úszás technikával.
In combination with regular practice, you can achieve remarkable results with this new swimming technique. In combination with regular practice, you can achieve remarkable results with this new swimming technique.
Ha több vizet innál, csökkenthetnéd az állandó fáradtság esélyét.
If you drank more water, you could reduce the chance of being fatigued all the time. If you drank more water, you could reduce the chance of being fatigued all the time.
Ez volt az egyetlen elfogadható magyarázat, amelyet fel tudtak hozni.
It was the only plausible explanation that they were able to come up with. It was the only plausible explanation that they were able to come up with.
Nincs rá garancia, hogy ez a módszer megakadályozza elmeállapotának további károsodását.
There is no guarantee that this method will prevent any further damage in her psychological condition. There is no guarantee that this method will prevent any further damage in her psychological condition.
Többek között szociális munkásként is dolgozott, míg Torontóban élt.
Among other things, he has worked as a social worker while he was living in Toronto. Among other things, he has worked as a social worker while he was living in Toronto.
Összefüggés van a magas fehérjebevitel és az izomnövekedés között.
There is a correlation between high protein intake and muscle growth. There is a correlation between high protein intake and muscle growth.
Miután végzett a Yale-en, Brenda egy tekintélyes cégnél kezdte el a karrierjét.
After graduating from Yale, Brenda started her career at a prestigious firm. After graduating from Yale, Brenda started her career at a prestigious firm.
Annak tudatában, hogy ez az utolsó esélyem, minden erőmmel azon voltam, hogy megtaláljam a másolatokat, amelyekre szükségem volt.
Being aware of the fact that it was my last chance, I put all my effort into finding the copies that I needed. Being aware of the fact that it was my last chance, I put all my effort into finding the copies that I needed.
A belvárosban hagyva az autót, tömegközlekedést használtam, hogy kiérjek a repülőtérre.
Leaving the car downtown, I used public transport to get to the airport. Leaving the car downtown, I used public transport to get to the airport.
Az amerikai társadalmat sokszínűség és kölcsönös elfogadás jellemzi.
The American society is characterized by diversity and mutual acceptance. The American society is characterized by diversity and mutual acceptance.
A házi munkát befejezve Diane leült az erkélyen egy kávéra.
Having completed the housework, Diane sat down for a coffee on the balcony. Having completed the housework, Diane sat down for a coffee on the balcony.
Nem számítottam rá, hogy újra látom, pedig így történt.
I wasn't expecting to see him again, but I did. I wasn't expecting to see him again, but I did.
Nem bántam meg, hogy Miát az éjszaka közepén hívtam fel, hogy elmondjam neki, hogy szeretem.
I didn't regret calling Mia in the middle of the night to tell her that I love her. I didn't regret calling Mia in the middle of the night to tell her that I love her.
A gyilkosság, megvesztegetés és emberrablás az ember ellen elkövetett súlyos bűncselekmények.
Homicide, bribery, and kidnapping are serious crimes against an individual. Homicide, bribery, and kidnapping are serious crimes against an individual.
A sikeres cégek állandóan reklámozzák a termékeiket és szolgáltatásaikat.
Successful companies constantly promote their products and services. Successful companies constantly promote their products and services.
A híres sportolóknak dollármilliókat fizetnek, hogy különböző cégek logóit viseljék a ruháikon.
Famous sports people are paid millions of dollars for wearing clothes with different companies' logos. Famous sports people are paid millions of dollars for wearing clothes with different companies' logos.
Mesés volt Toszkánában a táj, beleértve egyedi növényzetét és különleges épületeit.
The scenery in Tuscany was fabulous, including its unique flora and special buildings. The scenery in Tuscany was fabulous, including its unique flora and special buildings.
Aggodalommal töltött el, hogy az esküvőszervező 2 hónappal a nagy nap előtt még nem szervezett semmit.
It made me feel concerned to see that the wedding planner hadn't organized anything 2 months before the big day. It made me feel concerned to see that the wedding planner hadn't organized anything 2 months before the big day.
Nyugodtan elmehetsz a tanfolyamról, amikor szükséges.
You are free to leave the course at any time you need to. You are free to leave the course at any time you need to.
A férfinek nincs szándékában bármilyen könyvet is kiadni a közeljövőben.
The man has no intention of publishing any books in the near future. The man has no intention of publishing any books in the near future.
Amint megtaláltuk a lehető legjobb megoldást, megosztjuk veletek.
Once we have found the best possible solution, we will share it with you. Once we have found the best possible solution, we will share it with you.
A munka, amit szerdán kezdek, egyelőre ideiglenes.
For the time being, it is only a temporary job that I start on Wednesday. For the time being, it is only a temporary job that I start on Wednesday.
Azt tanácsolták, hogy fogadjuk el az ajánlatot.
They advised that we should accept the offer. They advised that we should accept the offer.
A japán étkezési szokások nagyon különböznek attól, amihez mi Magyarországon hozzászoktunk.
The eating habits in Japan are very different from what we are used to in Hungary. The eating habits in Japan are very different from what we are used to in Hungary.
Folyékonyan beszélni egy idegen nyelven azt jelenti, hogy nem gondolkodsz az anyanyelveden, mielőtt a mondatokat összerakod.
Being fluent in a foreign language means that you do not think in your mother tongue while forming your sentences. Being fluent in a foreign language means that you do not think in your mother tongue while forming your sentences.
Ha felhívtad volna a 911-et, a tűzoltók a helyszínen lettek volna 5 perc alatt.
If you had dialed 911, the fire brigade would have been on the scene in 5 minutes. If you had dialed 911, the fire brigade would have been on the scene in 5 minutes.
Bárcsak sokkal korábban ismertük volna Davidet.
I wish we had known David much earlier. I wish we had known David much earlier.
A cég próbálkozása, hogy megemelje a túlórát, heves tiltakozást váltott ki.
The company's attempt to increase overtime was met with fierce opposition. The company's attempt to increase overtime was met with fierce opposition.
Daniel reméli, hogy 60 éves koráig minden teljesít a bakancslistáján, hogy egy újat kezdhessen el írni.
Daniel hopes to accomplish everything on his bucket list by the age of 60 in order to start writing a new one. Daniel hopes to accomplish everything on his bucket list by the age of 60 in order to start writing a new one.
Az érdekel a legjobban, hogy hogyan tudnánk megszüntetni a kulturális korlátokat a kommunikációban.
What I'm most interested in is how we can eliminate cultural barriers in communication. What I'm most interested in is how we can eliminate cultural barriers in communication.
A doktori diploma megszerzése viszonylag több erőfeszítést igényel, mint egy 3 éves alapdiploma elvégzése.
Obtaining your PhD degree requires relatively more effort than doing a 3-year bachelor's degree. Obtaining your PhD degree requires relatively more effort than doing a 3-year bachelor's degree.
Az unokaöcsém olyan kitartó volt abban, hogy orvos lesz belőle, hogy csak orvosi szettekkel és játékmentő autókkal játszott.
My nephew was so persistent in his desire to become a doctor that he only played with medical kits and toy ambulance cars. My nephew was so persistent in his desire to become a doctor that he only played with medical kits and toy ambulance cars.
Attól függően, hogy milyen kultúrából jössz, a különböző kézmozdulatok más-más dolgokat jelenthetnek.
Depending on what culture you are from, different gestures can mean different things. Depending on what culture you are from, different gestures can mean different things.
Az író minden egyes gondolata olyan felemelő volt, hogy eldöntöttem, megveszem minden könyvét.
Every single thought of the writer was so uplifting that I decided to buy all her books. Every single thought of the writer was so uplifting that I decided to buy all her books.
Régen a szomszédok esténként összegyűltek és kártyáztak.
A long time ago, neighbors would gather together in the evenings and play cards. A long time ago, neighbors would gather together in the evenings and play cards.
Az egyetemi éveim alatt a szobatársaim éjszakánként tanultak, amikor senki nem zavarta őket.
In my university years, my roommates used to study at night when nobody was disturbing them. In my university years, my roommates used to study at night when nobody was disturbing them.
Ha az elnök megkérdezte volna a véleményemet, helyeseltem volna a javaslatát.
If the chairman had asked for my opinion, I would have approved of his proposal. If the chairman had asked for my opinion, I would have approved of his proposal.
Velencét gyakran a gondoláival és vízzel telt utcáival hozzák összefüggésbe.
Venice is often associated with its gondolas and water-filled streets. Venice is often associated with its gondolas and water-filled streets.
A szinkronúszó csapata sikerét mindig is megbecsült edzőjének tulajdonította.
The synchronized swimming team has always attributed its success to its respected coach. The synchronized swimming team has always attributed its success to its respected coach.
A panna cotta receptjében használt összetevők között található tejszín, vanília kivonat és zselatin.
Some of the ingredients used in the panna cotta recipe are heavy cream, vanilla extract, and gelatin. Some of the ingredients used in the panna cotta recipe are heavy cream, vanilla extract, and gelatin.
A legfontosabb feladatod most, hogy annyi szeretetet és figyelmet adj a gyermekednek, amennyit csak tudsz.
Your first concern now should be giving your child as much love and attention as you can. Your first concern now should be giving your child as much love and attention as you can.
Időbe telik a jó cselekedeteit következményeit meglátni, de megérni várni rájuk.
It takes time to see the consequences of your good actions, but they're worth waiting for. It takes time to see the consequences of your good actions, but they're worth waiting for.
A jelenléted hatalmas segítség a gyerekeknek ezekben a nehéz időkben.
Your presence is a tremendous help for the kids in these hard times. Your presence is a tremendous help for the kids in these hard times.
Ezt a szabályzatot elsősorban azzal a céllal hozták létre, hogy megvédje a hasonló helyzetben lévő embereket.
This regulation was primarily created to defend people in similar cases. This regulation was primarily created to defend people in similar cases.
Ez a weboldal kizárólag haladó szintű angol nyelvtanulók számára készült.
This website has been exclusively created for students of advanced level English. This website has been exclusively created for students of advanced level English.
Mindig lenyűgöz a makulátlanul tiszta, de vidám rendelő, amiben a gyerekeim orvosa dolgozik.
I am always impressed by the immaculate yet cheerful office my children's pediatrician works in. I am always impressed by the immaculate yet cheerful office my children's pediatrician works in.
A megfelelő határidőnapló napi használata hatalmas időmegtakarító lehet.
Using an appropriate calendar can be a huge daily time saver. Using an appropriate calendar can be a huge daily time saver.
Ha követnek, meg tudom mutatni pontosan ugyanazokat a könyveket, amelyeket Viktória királynő olvasott.
If you follow me, I can show you the exact same books Queen Victoria used to read. If you follow me, I can show you the exact same books Queen Victoria used to read.
A hatékony beszélgetés egyenlő arányú beszédet és figyelmet igényel.
An effective conversation requires an equal balance between talking and listening. An effective conversation requires an equal balance between talking and listening.
Elégedett vagy azzal, ahogy az új gyakornok teljesít a pozíciójában?
Are you satisfied with the way your trainee performs in his position? Are you satisfied with the way your trainee performs in his position?
Minden döntésünket arra az információra alapozva hozzuk meg, amit már tudunk.
We make all our decisions based on information we already know. We make all our decisions based on information we already know.
Soha nem hallottam korábban, hogy ha több mint egy nyelven beszélsz, az növeli a probléma megoldó képességeidet.
I have never heard before that speaking more than one language increases your problem-solving abilities. I have never heard before that speaking more than one language increases your problem-solving abilities.
Nehéz nem megbántanod valakit a körülötted lévők közül, amikor rossz a kedved.
It's hard for you not to offend somebody around you when you are in a bad mood. It's hard for you not to offend somebody around you when you are in a bad mood.
A reishi gombát rendszeresen írják fel Kínában azoknak az embereknek, akik stressztől vagy szorongástól szenvednek.
Reishi mushroom is regularly prescribed in China for people suffering from stress and anxiety. Reishi mushroom is regularly prescribed in China for people suffering from stress and anxiety.
Ez a fajta havi autóbiztosítás az ön autója által okozott károkat fedezi.
This type of monthly car insurance covers the damage caused by your car. This type of monthly car insurance covers the damage caused by your car.
A felnőtteknek az élet minden területén jó példát kell mutatniuk a fiatalabb generációnak.
Adults have to set a good example for the younger generation in all areas of life. Adults have to set a good example for the younger generation in all areas of life.
Sem a búvárkodás, sem az éjjászat nem nyűgözte le eléggé ahhoz, hogy még egyszer kipróbálja a Malajziában tett kirándulása alatt.
Neither scuba diving nor archery fascinated him enough to try it more than once during his excursion in Malaysia. Neither scuba diving nor archery fascinated him enough to try it more than once during his excursion in Malaysia.
A fővárosunkban egy épület sem válhat lepusztulttá.
No buildings in our capital are allowed to become shabby. No buildings in our capital are allowed to become shabby.
A megfogan szót egy Jay Leno interjúban tanultam Pierce Brosnan-től.
I learned the word conceive from Pierce Brosnan in an interview with Jay Leno. I learned the word conceive from Pierce Brosnan in an interview with Jay Leno.
Ez a reklámkampány azokat az egyéneket célozza meg, akik rendszeresen sportolnak.
This advertising campaign is targeted at individuals who exercise actively. This advertising campaign is targeted at individuals who exercise actively.
Gazdasági szempontból az Egyesült Államok és Kína a világvezetők.
In terms of economy, the United States and China are world leaders. In terms of economy, the United States and China are world leaders.
A misszionárius csapat tagjai káprázatosan jól teljesítettek a 3 napos nigériai útjuk alatt.
The members of the missionary team did astonishingly well during their 3-day Nigerian trip. The members of the missionary team did astonishingly well during their 3-day Nigerian trip.
Egyik kemény kihívás sem tudta megfélemlíteni az önkénteseket, akik elszántan folytatták munkájukat.
None of the tough challenges could intimidate the volunteers who carried on with their work fearlessly. None of the tough challenges could intimidate the volunteers who carried on with their work fearlessly.
Warden úr egyike azon kitartó ügyfeleinknek, akik nem mennek el, amíg meg nem kapják, amit akarnak.
Mr. Warden is one of those insistent clients who don't leave until they get what they want. Mr. Warden is one of those insistent clients who don't leave until they get what they want.
Minden asszisztens megpróbálta lebeszélni Lénát arról, hogy felmondjon, de ő nem volt hajlandó a kollégáira hallgatni.
All the assistants tried to talk Lena out of quitting her job, but she refused to listen to her colleagues. All the assistants tried to talk Lena out of quitting her job, but she refused to listen to her colleagues.
Viszonylag könnyű valaki elvárásainak megfelelni, amikor elég motivációt kapsz a feladat teljesítéséhez.
It's relatively easy to live up to someone's expectations when getting enough motivation to complete the task. It's relatively easy to live up to someone's expectations when getting enough motivation to complete the task.
Minden állami kézben lévő oktatási intézménynek csökkentenie kell a felesleges kiadásait.
All state-owned educational institutions are to cut back on unnecessary expenditures. All state-owned educational institutions are to cut back on unnecessary expenditures.
Bele kell törődnünk az extra túlórába, amíg a projektet be nem fejezzük és be nem adjuk.
We have to put up with more overtime until this project is finished and submitted. We have to put up with more overtime until this project is finished and submitted.
Ezeknek a terveknek a nagy részét év végére megvalósítják.
The vast majority of these plans will have been implemented by the end of the year. The vast majority of these plans will have been implemented by the end of the year.
Azért, hogy pontos képet fessek arról, mi is történik most, egy pár részletbe bele kell mennem.
To paint an accurate picture of what is happening right now, I need to go into some details. To paint an accurate picture of what is happening right now, I need to go into some details.
Jelentős fejlődést értek el a hepatitis C kutatásában.
They have been making considerable progress in the research of hepatitis C. They have been making considerable progress in the research of hepatitis C.
Egy ilyen bonyolult esetben csak arra emlékeztetnélek, hogy használd azt az információt, amit már tudsz a szervezetről.
In such a difficult case, I can only remind you to use the information you already know about the organization. In such a difficult case, I can only remind you to use the information you already know about the organization.
A dolgozók felének elbocsátása semmiképpen nem tudja orvosolni a cégünket érintő problémákat.
Letting go of over half of the employees cannot in any respect remedy the problems our company faces. Letting go of over half of the employees cannot in any respect remedy the problems our company faces.
Kérünk, szólj előre, ha segítségre lesz szükséged a dokumentumok fordításában.
Let us know in advance if you need assistance with the translation of the documents. Let us know in advance if you need assistance with the translation of the documents.
Soha nem szabad vonakodnunk, megtenni az első lépéseket a céljaink felé.
We should never be reluctant to take the first step towards our goals. We should never be reluctant to take the first step towards our goals.
Ha már Fokvárosban vagy, feltétlenül el kell látogatnod a Jó Reménység fokához.
Once you are in Cape Town, visiting the Cape of Good Hope is a must. Once you are in Cape Town, visiting the Cape of Good Hope is a must.
Általában tanácstalan vagyok, amikor ajándékot kell vennem a mennyasszonyomnak.
I'm usually at a loss when I have to buy a gift for my fiancé. I'm usually at a loss when I have to buy a gift for my fiancé.
Hamarosan végre egyensúlyba tudom hozni a természetben és az irodán belül töltött időmet.
I am about to finally make a balance between my time spent in nature and working in the office. I am about to finally make a balance between my time spent in nature and working in the office.
Nem lenne sokkal jobb kiszállni a mókuskerékből, és mindent újra kezdeni egy lassabb tempóban?
Wouldn't it be much better to get off the treadmill and start it all over at a slower pace? Wouldn't it be much better to get off the treadmill and start it all over at a slower pace?
Ha esetleg a közelben vagy, ugorj be egy kávéra.
If you happen to be in the neighborhood, drop in for a coffee. If you happen to be in the neighborhood, drop in for a coffee.
A becslések szerint az autók ára akár 15%-kal is csökkenhet.
It has been estimated that car prices will decrease by up to 15%. It has been estimated that car prices will decrease by up to 15%.
Szerinted ki veszi át Brian feladatait, amíg ő Floridában lesz?
Who do you suppose will take over his responsibilities while Brian is in Florida? Who do you suppose will take over his responsibilities while Brian is in Florida?
Ha jól emlékszem, nem sok látnivaló van azon a helyen.
As far as I remember, there is not much to see at that place. As far as I remember, there is not much to see at that place.
Charlie megígérte, hogy segít nekünk azzal a feltétellel, hogy viszonozzuk a szívességét.
Charlie promised to help us on condition that we return the favor. Charlie promised to help us on condition that we return the favor.
Mindig ugyanarra a helyre megyünk vacsorázni. A változatosság kedvéért most menjünk máshová.
We always go to the same place to have dinner. Let's go somewhere else for a change. We always go to the same place to have dinner. Let's go somewhere else for a change.
Úgy sétált be a szobába, mintha nem tudott volna a meglepetés buliról.
She walked into the room as if she hadn't known about the surprise party. She walked into the room as if she hadn't known about the surprise party.
Ezt a furcsa jelenséget minden tavasszal ugyanabban az időben lehet látni.
This weird phenomenon can be seen at the same time every spring. This weird phenomenon can be seen at the same time every spring.
Megfelelő mennyiségű edzéssel, akaraterővel és kitartással Bill képes volt megmászni a Himaláját.
With adequate amounts of training, willpower, and stamina, Bill was able to climb Mount Everest. With adequate amounts of training, willpower, and stamina, Bill was able to climb Mount Everest.
Tudsz különbséget tenni az új-zélandi és az ausztrál akcentus között?
Can you make a distinction between the New Zealand and Australian accents? Can you make a distinction between the New Zealand and Australian accents?
Már óriási pénzösszegeket költöttek energiatermelő szélmalmok építésére.
They have already spent huge sums of money on building energy-producing windmills. They have already spent huge sums of money on building energy-producing windmills.
Joyce alkalmanként kivesz egy pár napot, hogy a barátaival elmenjen testileg és szellemileg is feltöltődni.
Joyce occasionally takes a few days off to go away with her friends to recharge both physically and spiritually. Joyce occasionally takes a few days off to go away with her friends to recharge both physically and spiritually.
Ennek a szemináriumnak az alapvető célja az, hogy részletes információt adjon a résztvevőknek a főiskolai felvételi eljárásról.
The primary purpose of this seminar is to give the partakers detailed information about the admission process of colleges. The primary purpose of this seminar is to give the partakers detailed information about the admission process of colleges.
A munkaadó igényei olyan észszerűtlenek voltak, hogy nem tudtunk megfelelni az elvárásainak.
The employer's demands were so unreasonable that we couldn't keep up with his expectations. The employer's demands were so unreasonable that we couldn't keep up with his expectations.
Dylannek nem volt szabad sem utazni, sem a külvilággal kommunikálni, amikor büntetésben volt.
Dylan was not allowed to travel or communicate with the outside world when he was grounded. Dylan was not allowed to travel or communicate with the outside world when he was grounded.
A vélemények megoszlanak azzal kapcsolatban, hogy a külvárosban kellene építeni a bevásárlóközpontot.
Opinion is divided as to whether the shopping mall should be built in the suburbs. Opinion is divided as to whether the shopping mall should be built in the suburbs.
Nem kevesebb, mint idejük 20%-át töltik a tizenévesek üzenetek írásával.
Adolescents spend no less than 20% of their time on texting. Adolescents spend no less than 20% of their time on texting.
Az idős férfi azt a kevés pénzét is, ami van neki, szeretett unokáinak adja.
The elderly man gives what little money he has to his beloved grandchildren. The elderly man gives what little money he has to his beloved grandchildren.
Már jó pár éve nem látták egymást.
They haven't seen each other for quite a few years. They haven't seen each other for quite a few years.
A vőlegény kezei és lábai kicsit remegtek, amikor megpillantotta elragadó menyasszonyát.
The bridegroom felt a little tingling in his hands and feet when he glanced at his gorgeous bride. The bridegroom felt a little tingling in his hands and feet when he glanced at his gorgeous bride.
Ha legalább 40 évet dolgoztál, jogosult vagy nyugdíjra, miután visszavonulsz a munkából.
If you have worked for at least 40 years, you are entitled to receive a pension after you retire. If you have worked for at least 40 years, you are entitled to receive a pension after you retire.
A társadalomtól való elszigeteltségük miatt az Amish embereket gyakran félreértik polgártársaik.
Due to their isolation from society, Amish people are often misunderstood by their fellow citizens. Due to their isolation from society, Amish people are often misunderstood by their fellow citizens.
Kissé érzéketlen, amikor arról van szó, hogy másokat kell meghallgatni.
He is slightly insensitive when it comes to listening to other people. He is slightly insensitive when it comes to listening to other people.
A megbocsátás nagyon fontos a tiszta lelkiismerethez.
Forgiveness is critical for a clean conscience. Forgiveness is critical for a clean conscience.
A privatizáció bizonyos mértékben összefüggésben van a mai témával.
Is privatization to some extent related to today's topic? Is privatization to some extent related to today's topic?
Volt már lehetőséged részt venni nemzetközi kulturális továbbképzéseken?
Have you had a chance to participate in international cultural trainings yet? Have you had a chance to participate in international cultural trainings yet?
Kérlek, tartsd fejben, hogy nem tudunk minden kérdésedre azonnal válaszolni.
Please bear in mind that we cannot answer all your questions immediately. Please bear in mind that we cannot answer all your questions immediately.
A válasza gyors, de kielégítő volt.
His response was quick but satisfying. His response was quick but satisfying.
A vámtisztek elkobozták az összes drogot, amit az autó csomagtartójában találtak.
All the drugs found in the trunk of the car have been confiscated by the customs officers. All the drugs found in the trunk of the car have been confiscated by the customs officers.
Nem akartam őket a rossz hírrel terhelni, így elhallgattam előlük.
I didn't want to trouble them with the bad news, so I kept it back from them. I didn't want to trouble them with the bad news, so I kept it back from them.
Most már nyilvánvaló, hogy ki volt felelős a történtekért.
It seems obvious now who was responsible for the events. It seems obvious now who was responsible for the events.
Miután kitűzték a célokat, áttértek a kevésbé fontos pontok megtárgyalására.
After the objectives had been set, they went on to discuss the minor points. After the objectives had been set, they went on to discuss the minor points.
A főszakács állandóan más menükkel jön elő, amikor megtudja, hogy különleges vendégek jönnek meglátogatni a helyet.
The chef comes up with an alternative menu whenever he finds out that special guests are coming to visit the place. The chef comes up with an alternative menu whenever he finds out that special guests are coming to visit the place.
Minden visszajelzés pozitív volt eddig, amit az ügyfelektől kaptunk.
Feedback received from the clients has all been positive until now. Feedback received from the clients has all been positive until now.
Minden fent említett gyógyszer kapható pillanatnyilag.
All medicines listed above are currently available. All medicines listed above are currently available.
A tartalmát tekintve Maria legújabb útikönyve felülmúlt a reményeinket.
In terms of its content, Maria's newest travel guide exceeded our hopes. In terms of its content, Maria's newest travel guide exceeded our hopes.
Próbáltak kiszedni belőlem belső információkat, de én lakatot tettem a számra.
They tried to coax me into giving out some internal information, but my lips were sealed. They tried to coax me into giving out some internal information, but my lips were sealed.
Jelentős technológiai áttörés lesz az autógyártásban a következő évtizedekben.
There will be a significant technological breakthrough in car production in the next decades. There will be a significant technological breakthrough in car production in the next decades.
A nyomozók hamarosan rájöttek, hogy minden megkérdezett nő elvált volt, és a különválást minden esetben hűtlen férjek kezdeményezték.
Investigators soon found out that all the women questioned were divorced, and in each case their separation was initiated by cheating husbands. Investigators soon found out that all the women questioned were divorced, and in each case their separation was initiated by cheating husbands.
Milyen óvintézkedéseket kéne hozni, hogy meg lehessen akadályozni a tűz terjedését, ha már kigyulladt?
What precautions should be taken to avoid the fire from spreading once it has started? What precautions should be taken to avoid the fire from spreading once it has started?
A lemaradástól való félelem azt jelenti, hogy szorongsz, hogy lemaradsz valamilyen szórakoztató társasági eseményről.
When you have FOMO, fear of missing out, you experience a feeling of anxiety that you are left out of a fun social event. When you have FOMO, fear of missing out, you experience a feeling of anxiety that you are left out of a fun social event.
Nehéz bármilyen következtetésre jutni a beszélgetésünkben, ha minden egyes kijelentésemnek ellent mondasz.
It is hard to reach any conclusions in our conversation if you contradict every single statement I make. It is hard to reach any conclusions in our conversation if you contradict every single statement I make.
A férfi olyan dühös volt, hogy mindent eldobott és kiviharzott a szobából.
The man was so upset that he threw away everything and stormed out of the room. The man was so upset that he threw away everything and stormed out of the room.
Bárhol is élsz, a távmunkának sokféle előnye van.
Wherever you live, the advantages of teleworking are manifold. Wherever you live, the advantages of teleworking are manifold.
A gyerekek folyamatos felmérését nagyszerű eszköznek találták teljesítményeik értékelésében.
They have found children's continuous assessment to be a great tool in evaluating performance. They have found children's continuous assessment to be a great tool in evaluating performance.
Biztos vagyok benne, hogy a háború sújtotta területekre küldött pénzügyi támogatás sok életet mentett meg.
I am confident that the financial aid sent to the war-stricken areas has saved plenty of lives. I am confident that the financial aid sent to the war-stricken areas has saved plenty of lives.
Ami a klónozást illeti, jogi és etikai háttere még mindig vitatott.
As for cloning, its legal and ethical background is still controversial. As for cloning, its legal and ethical background is still controversial.
Arra a következtetésre jutottak, hogy amikor a fiúk és a lányok az iskolákban el vannak különítve, a lányok magabiztosabban teljesítenek.
They came to the conclusion that when boys and girls are separated in schools, girls are more self-assured in their performance. They came to the conclusion that when boys and girls are separated in schools, girls are more self-assured in their performance.
Gyakornokok alkalmazása költséghatékony módja egy cég alkalmazottainak tehermentesítésére.
Hiring apprentices is a cost-effective way of taking some burdens off the employees of a company. Hiring apprentices is a cost-effective way of taking some burdens off the employees of a company.
A tegnapi statisztika azt mutatja, hogy a polgárok 63,2%-a járult az urnákhoz a választásokon.
Yesterday's statistics show that 63.2% of citizens turned out to vote at the elections. Yesterday's statistics show that 63.2% of citizens turned out to vote at the elections.
Van valami ellenvetésed az egész szerződés átírásával kapcsolatban?
Do you have any objections to rewriting the whole contract? Do you have any objections to rewriting the whole contract?
Az elnök körüli botrány nem segített neki több szavazatot gyűjteni.
The scandal around the president didn't help him collect more votes. The scandal around the president didn't help him collect more votes.
Egy figyelemfelkeltő főcím képes megragadni az olvasók figyelmét.
An alluring headline has the ability to attract the attention of readers. An alluring headline has the ability to attract the attention of readers.
Tudatalatt mindig a hagyományos módszerekre gondolunk először.
Unconsciously, it is always the conventional methods that we first think of. Unconsciously, it is always the conventional methods that we first think of.
Csak akkor tudjuk a járművek károsanyag kibocsátását csökkenteni, ha a kínai kormányhoz hasonlóan korlátozzuk az utakon lévő autók számát.
We can only reduce vehicle emissions if, similarly to the Chinese government, we limit the number of cars on the roads. We can only reduce vehicle emissions if, similarly to the Chinese government, we limit the number of cars on the roads.
A tárgyalás alatt a bírónak van joga meghozni a végső döntést a büntetéssel kapcsolatban.
During the trial, the judge has the right to make the final decision about the penalty. During the trial, the judge has the right to make the final decision about the penalty.
Bárki is találja meg a bizonyítékot először, ő fogja megkapni a jutalmat.
Whoever finds the proof first will get the reward. Whoever finds the proof first will get the reward.
A vírus sokkal gyorsabban terjedt, mint ahogyan arra korábban számítottak.
The virus spread much faster than they had earlier expected. The virus spread much faster than they had earlier expected.
Most már bánom, hogy nem mondtam el korábban az igazságot, de akkor észszerű döntésnek tűnt, hogy titokban tartsam.
I'm regretting now that I didn't tell you the truth earlier, but it seemed to be a reasonable decision to keep it a secret at the time. I'm regretting now that I didn't tell you the truth earlier, but it seemed to be a reasonable decision to keep it a secret at the time.
Néhányak számára a piercing csak egyediségük kifejezésének egy formája, mások számára pedig a lázadás egy módja.
For some people, getting a piercing is a form of expressing their uniqueness, while, for others, it is a way of rebellion. For some people, getting a piercing is a form of expressing their uniqueness, while, for others, it is a way of rebellion.
Dr. Gondár természetgyógyászként vált elismertté.
Dr. Gondar became recognized as a naturopath. Dr. Gondar became recognized as a naturopath.
Ne kockáztasd a házasságod egy veszélyes szerelmi kalanddal.
Don't jeopardize your marriage by a risky love affair. Don't jeopardize your marriage by a risky love affair.
A bankok főleg kölcsönökre és biztosításokra szakosodtak, de valutaváltással és bérbeadással is foglalkoznak.
Banks largely specialize in loans and insurance, but also deal with currency exchange and leasing. Banks largely specialize in loans and insurance, but also deal with currency exchange and leasing.
Annak ellenére, hogy nem volt előzetes szakmai tapasztalata, rendkívül tehetséges tanárnak bizonyult.
She proved to be a tremendously talented teacher, despite her lack of previous professional experience. She proved to be a tremendously talented teacher, despite her lack of previous professional experience.
Mikor éri meg különösen külföldön munkát vállalni?
When is it particularly worth taking a job abroad? When is it particularly worth taking a job abroad?
Számos étterem fokozatosan bővíti szolgáltatásait, hogy versenyben tudjon maradni.
Several restaurants are progressively expanding their services to keep up with the competition. Several restaurants are progressively expanding their services to keep up with the competition.
A luxusautók fenntartási költségei évi több ezer dollárra rúghatnak.
The maintenance costs of luxurious cars can amount to several thousands of dollars per year. The maintenance costs of luxurious cars can amount to several thousands of dollars per year.
Ha állandóan rohansz, az azt az üzenetet hordozza, hogy több teher van a válladon, mint amennyit el tudsz viselni.
If you rush all the time, it conveys the message that you have more burden on your shoulders than you can bear. If you rush all the time, it conveys the message that you have more burden on your shoulders than you can bear.
A körülményeket tekintve a szervezők kitűnő munkát végeztek a világbajnokságon.
Considering the circumstances, the organizers did an excellent job at the World Championship. Considering the circumstances, the organizers did an excellent job at the World Championship.
Abban reménykedem, hogy pár hónapon belül bővíteni tudom japán tudásomat.
I hope to be able to expand my level of knowledge in Japanese within a few months. I hope to be able to expand my level of knowledge in Japanese within a few months.
Ez a növekedés hosszú távon nem fenntartható, ha nem veszünk figyelembe ökológiai szempontokat is.
This growth isn't sustainable on a long-term basis without taking some ecological factors into consideration. This growth isn't sustainable on a long-term basis without taking some ecological factors into consideration.
A Föld természeti erőforrásai gyorsan fogynak, így a tudósok állandóan új módokat találnak ki az újrahasznosítható energia előállítására.
The natural resources of the Earth are running low fast, so scientists are constantly inventing new ways to produce renewable energy. The natural resources of the Earth are running low fast, so scientists are constantly inventing new ways to produce renewable energy.
Az önvezető autó prototípusát a tesztvezetők visszajelzései alapján módosították.
The prototype of the self-driving car was modified on the basis of feedback from test drivers. The prototype of the self-driving car was modified on the basis of feedback from test drivers.
Meg tudná nevezni számítógép okozta egészségügyi problémákat?
Can you name any computer-related health problems? Can you name any computer-related health problems?
A hír, hogy az elnök felesége babát vár, futótűzként terjedt.
The news of the president's wife expecting a baby spread like wildfire. The news of the president's wife expecting a baby spread like wildfire.
A világ legnevesebb egyetemei közül néhány ingyenes online tanfolyamokat ajánl fel angolul beszélő diákoknak.
Some of the world's most reputable universities offer free online courses to English-speaking students. Some of the world's most reputable universities offer free online courses to English-speaking students.
Az erdők kivágása manapság igen súlyos probléma, mert csökkenti a légkörben az oxigén mennyiségét.
Deforestation is a very serious problem these days because it reduces the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere. Deforestation is a very serious problem these days because it reduces the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere.
A méregtelenítés nagyszerű módja annak, hogy megtisztítsd szerveidet a káros anyagoktól.
Detoxification is a great way to clean your organs of harmful substances. Detoxification is a great way to clean your organs of harmful substances.
A CrossFit fokozza a fizikai és mentális jólétet is.
CrossFit enhances both physical and mental well-being. CrossFit enhances both physical and mental well-being.
A hajléktalanság kérdésére térve, fő célunk visszahelyezni ezeket az egyéneket a társadalomba.
Turning to the question of homelessness, our main goal is to reintegrate these individuals into society. Turning to the question of homelessness, our main goal is to reintegrate these individuals into society.
Nem szegheted meg a szabályokat csak azért, mert a nagybátyád az alelnök.
You can't violate the rules just because your uncle is the vice president. You can't violate the rules just because your uncle is the vice president.
Az aranyhalakat naponta egyszer kell megetetni, nem rendszertelenül.
Goldfish need to be fed once a day, not at irregular times. Goldfish need to be fed once a day, not at irregular times.
A forgalom ma délután több mint 3 órára leállt a tüntetők miatt.
Traffic was held up for over 3 hours this afternoon because of the protesters. Traffic was held up for over 3 hours this afternoon because of the protesters.
Mivel a lopás szemtanúja volt, felelős a hatóságoknál bejelentést tenni.
Being an eyewitness of the theft, he is responsible for reporting it to the authorities. Being an eyewitness of the theft, he is responsible for reporting it to the authorities.
A bonsai művészetét eredetileg Japánban fejlesztették ki, de manapság sok nyugati országban is művelik.
The art of bonsai originally comes from Japan, but today it is cultivated in many Western countries too. The art of bonsai originally comes from Japan, but today it is cultivated in many Western countries too.
Aerobik csoportját képviselve a kisfiú büszkén lépett a színpadra, hogy átvegye a díjat.
Representing his aerobic group, the little boy proudly stepped onto the stage to accept the prize. Representing his aerobic group, the little boy proudly stepped onto the stage to accept the prize.
Annak ellenére, hogy minden évben lefutja a maratont, nem vitatható, hogy a kézilabda a kedvenc sportja.
Despite his running the marathon every year, handball is, by all means, his favorite kind of sport. Despite his running the marathon every year, handball is, by all means, his favorite kind of sport.
Számos kreatív módon lehet beépíteni a spirulinát és hasonló szuper élelmiszereket az étrendedbe.
There are numerous of creative ways to integrate superfoods like spirulina into your diet. There are numerous of creative ways to integrate superfoods like spirulina into your diet.
Emberek milliói vándorolnak a nyugat-európai országokba egy jobb élet reményében.
Millions of people migrate to Western European countries in hope of a better life. Millions of people migrate to Western European countries in hope of a better life.
Katalin, Cambridge-i hercegné várhatóan jövő hét pénteken tartja beszédét a felsőoktatásról.
Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, is expected to give her speech on tertiary education next Friday. Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, is expected to give her speech on tertiary education next Friday.
Mindenképpen szándékozunk szavazni a népszavazáson.
We definitely intend to vote in the referendum. We definitely intend to vote in the referendum.
Azért, hogy a barátjának segítsen, Patrick eldöntötte, hogy részt vesz egy rövid közvéleménykutatáson.
To help his friend, Patrick had resolved to take part in a short survey. To help his friend, Patrick had resolved to take part in a short survey.
A bizottság nem volt benne biztos, hogy maradt-e még elég ideje megbeszélni egy másik kérdést.
The committee wasn't sure whether they had enough time left to discuss another issue. The committee wasn't sure whether they had enough time left to discuss another issue.
A baktériumok gyorsan elterjednek, ha a fertőzés nincs megfelelően kezelve.
The bacteria will spread quickly unless the infection gets treated properly. The bacteria will spread quickly unless the infection gets treated properly.
A vevők nem tudták eldönteni, hogy elfogadják-e a kedvező ajánlatot.
The buyers couldn't decide if they should take the favorable offer. The buyers couldn't decide if they should take the favorable offer.
Sokat jelent a tanszékünknek, hogy teljesen elkötelezted magad erre a munkára.
It means a lot to our department that you are fully committed to this job. It means a lot to our department that you are fully committed to this job.
Nevetséges, hogy ez az ügyvéd milyen gyorsan tud paragrafusokat idézni a polgári törvénykönyvből.
It is ridiculous how fast this lawyer can quote paragraphs from the Civil Code. It is ridiculous how fast this lawyer can quote paragraphs from the Civil Code.
Sok elszántság kell ahhoz, hogy a tervezéstől a megvalósításig eljussunk.
It takes a lot of determination to get from planning to realization. It takes a lot of determination to get from planning to realization.
Rendszeresen kérem a barátaim tanácsát.
I ask my friends for advice on a regular basis. I ask my friends for advice on a regular basis.
Utólag visszatekintve jobban nem is ismertethettük volna meg őket legújabb dokumentumfilmjeinkkel.
Retrospectively, there couldn't have been a better way to get them acquainted with our latest documentaries. Retrospectively, there couldn't have been a better way to get them acquainted with our latest documentaries.
Pontosan mit jelent a szerzői jogok megsértése?
What exactly is meant by copyright infringement? What exactly is meant by copyright infringement?
Ezen a 3 kategórián belül alcsoportokat hozhatnánk létre, hogy az egész képet átláthatóvá tegyük.
we could create subsequent groups within these three categories to make the whole picture transparent. We could create subsequent groups within these three categories to make the whole picture transparent.
Egy átfogó képet kellene nyújtani, hogy mindenki világosan megértse a témát.
A comprehensive picture needs to be provided so that everybody can understand the topic clearly. A comprehensive picture needs to be provided so that everybody can understand the topic clearly.
Mindig volt egy csomag papír zsebkendő a táskájában arra az esetre, ha elérzékenyülne.
She always had a packet of tissues in her handbag in case she overcame by emotion. She always had a packet of tissues in her handbag in case she overcame by emotion.
Számtalan tudományos tanulmány mutatta ki, hogy az oregano olaj megelőzheti a vírusos és bakteriális betegségeket.
Countless scientific studies have revealed that oregano oil can prevent viral and bacterial diseases. Countless scientific studies have revealed that oregano oil can prevent viral and bacterial diseases.
A technológia fejlődése alapvetően változtatta meg társasági viszonyainkat és kommunikációs módszereinket.
Technological advances have radically altered our social relationships and communication methods. Technological advances have radically altered our social relationships and communication methods.
A humán erőforrás igazgató várhatóan ebben az évben megy nyugdíjba.
The Human Resources Director is due to retire this year. The Human Resources Director is due to retire this year.
A fizetések Közép-Európában viszonylag alacsonyak, főleg a nyugat-európai országokhoz képest.
Salaries in Central Europe are relatively low, especially compared to Western European countries. Salaries in Central Europe are relatively low, especially compared to Western European countries.
Vitathatatlannak tűnik, hogy ez a folyamat elég biztonságos.
It seems indisputable that this process is secure enough. It seems indisputable that this process is secure enough.
A valóságban mi ezt másképpen csináljuk.
In reality, we do this in a different way. In reality, we do this in a different way.
Húzd alá a főbb pontokat a korábban említett szövegben.
Underline the main points in the previously mentioned text. Underline the main points in the previously mentioned text.
Ahogyan azt már korábban mondtam, nincs értelme múltbéli döntéseink miatt aggódni.
Like I said before, there is no point in worrying about past decisions. Like I said before, there is no point in worrying about past decisions.
Mark annyira félti a lányát, hogy már fiúkat sem enged a közelébe.
Mark is so overprotective of his daughter that he doesn't even let boys near her anymore. Mark is so overprotective of his daughter that he doesn't even let boys near her anymore.
A legfrissebb felmérések azt mutatják, hogy a Z-generáció tagjai körében a YouTube lassan, de biztosan átveszi a leggyakrabban használt platform szerepét a Facebooktól.
Recent surveys show that, slowly but surely, YouTube is replacing Facebook as the most used platform among Generation Z members. Recent surveys show that, slowly but surely, YouTube is replacing Facebook as the most used platform among Generation Z members.
Az indiai utamat követően eldöntöttem, hogy jobban megismerem ezt a gazdag kultúrát.
Following my trip to India, I decided to get to know more about this rich culture. Following my trip to India, I decided to get to know more about this rich culture.
Utoljára a 20-as éveimben olvastam könyveket a csillagászatról. Azóta nem tanultam semmi újat ebben a témában.
I last read books on astronomy in my 20s. Since then, I haven't learned anything new in this subject. I last read books on astronomy in my 20s. Since then, I haven't learned anything new in this subject.
A zöld kártya nélkülözhetetlen dokumentum a bevándorlók számára, ha törvényesen akarnak élni és dolgozni az Amerikai Egyesült Államokban.
A green card is an indispensable document for immigrants if they want to legally live and work in the United States of America. A green card is an indispensable document for immigrants if they want to legally live and work in the United States of America.
Nagyon szerencsés ember vagy, ha van legalább egy olyan ember az életedben, aki feltétel nélkül szeret.
You are a very lucky person if there is at least one person in your life who loves you unconditionally. You are a very lucky person if there is at least one person in your life who loves you unconditionally.
Más fajokkal egyetemben a hegyi gorillák is a kihalás szélén állnak.
Together with other species, mountain gorillas are also on the verge of extinction. Together with other species, mountain gorillas are also on the verge of extinction.
Minden egyetemi hallgató, aki munkát végez a tanulás mellett, adómentességet élvez.
All university students who work besides studying are exempt from tax. All university students who work besides studying are exempt from tax.
Edward tapasztalata túl csekély ezen a területen, de hajlandó lennék adni neki egy esélyt.
Edward's experience in this field is too narrow, but I would be willing to give him a chance. Edward's experience in this field is too narrow, but I would be willing to give him a chance.
Az idő nagyon lassan telik, amikor nincs semmi dolgod.
Time passes very slowly when you have nothing to do. Time passes very slowly when you have nothing to do.
Az esetek nagy részében a nők gyengédebbek, mint a férfiak.
Most of the time, women tend to be more affectionate than men. Most of the time, women tend to be more affectionate than men.
Legelőször is meg kellene tőle kérdezni, hogy mennyi időre szeretne gyesre menni.
First and foremost, we should ask how long she would like to be on maternity leave. First and foremost, we should ask how long she would like to be on maternity leave.
Hallottad a legújabb pletykát, hogy Jen és Michael örökbe fogadnak egy fiút?
Have you heard the latest rumors about Jen and Michael's adopting a boy? Have you heard the latest rumors about Jen and Michael's adopting a boy?
űrt érzett a szívében, addig, amíg meg nem találta az igazit.
He had felt an emptiness in his heart until he found the right one. He had felt an emptiness in his heart until he found the right one.
Előbb vagy utóbb rá fog jönni, hogy ez nem egy álommunka.
Sooner or later, she will realize that this is not a dream job. Sooner or later, she will realize that this is not a dream job.
Az ózonréteg elvékonyodása bizonyítja, hogy az emberi hanyagságnak káros hatásai vannak a bolygónkra.
The thinning of the ozone layer proves that human negligence has a harmful impact on our planet. The thinning of the ozone layer proves that human negligence has a harmful impact on our planet.
A maximalista emberek a legjobbat várják el másoktól és maguktól is.
Perfectionists demand the best from others and themselves as well. Perfectionists demand the best from others and themselves as well.
Amikor egy webáruház kifogy egy termékből, általában értesíti ügyfeleit, hogy mikor lesz ismét raktáron az árucikk.
When a web shop runs out of a product, it usually notifies its customers when the item will be in stock again. When a web shop runs out of a product, it usually notifies its customers when the item will be in stock again.
A szélessávú internet segítségével sok információhoz hozzáférhetsz.
With the help of broadband internet, you can access a great deal of information. With the help of broadband internet, you can access a great deal of information.
A kormány több pénzt fektet ma az űrkutatásba, mint valaha.
The government invests more money in space exploration today than ever before. The government invests more money in space exploration today than ever before.
Bizonyos mértékben minden óceán veszélyes anyagokkal szennyezett.
All the oceans are contaminated with hazardous materials to a certain extent. All the oceans are contaminated with hazardous materials to a certain extent.
A háztartási hulladék újrahasznosítása környezetbarát megoldás, mert energiát takarít meg.
The recycling of domestic waste is an eco-friendly solution because it saves energy. The recycling of domestic waste is an eco-friendly solution because it saves energy.
Az időjárás jelentős mértékben befolyásolja egy ország mezőgazdaságát, és így egész gazdaságát.
Weather significantly affects the agriculture and, thus, the whole economy of a country. Weather significantly affects the agriculture and, thus, the whole economy of a country.
Még ha nem is babonás egy hajadonlány, biztosan boldog, amikor elkapja a mennyasszony csukrát egy esküvőn.
Even if a single girl is not superstitious, she is surely happy to catch the bride's bouquet at a wedding. Even if a single girl is not superstitious, she is surely happy to catch the bride's bouquet at a wedding.
Észak-Európában a friss házasok kertjébe ültetett kis fenyőfa a termékenységet és jó szerencsét jelképezi.
In Northern Europe, a small pine tree planted in the newlyweds' garden symbolizes fertility and good luck. In Northern Europe, a small pine tree planted in the newlyweds' garden symbolizes fertility and good luck.
Néhányan úgy gondolják, hogy az olvasás hiánya az intelligencia hiányát vonja maga után.
Some believe that the lack of reading can result in a lack of intelligence. Some believe that the lack of reading can result in a lack of intelligence.
Többé már nem szükséges bemutatnod az útleveledet a határnál az EU-s országokon belül.
It's no longer necessary to show your passport at the border within EU countries. It's no longer necessary to show your passport at the border within EU countries.
Úgy gondoltam, hogy időpazarlás elmagyarázni, hogy hogyan működnek az atomerőművek, de nem volt igazam.
I thought it was a waste of time to explain how nuclear power plants work, but I proved to be wrong. I thought it was a waste of time to explain how nuclear power plants work, but I proved to be wrong.
Attól tartok, ebben az esetben nincs más választás, mint sem csökkenteni az árakat.
I'm afraid there is no alternative in this case but to lower prices. I'm afraid there is no alternative in this case but to lower prices.
Olyan módon tervezték meg az épületet, hogy a látogatók két különböző irányból tudnak belépni.
They designed the building in such a way that visitors can enter from two different directions. They designed the building in such a way that visitors can enter from two different directions.
Ha a helyedben lennék, kampányt szerveznék minden esőerdőbeli élőhely megmentésére.
If I were you, I would organize a campaign to save all rainforest habitats. If I were you, I would organize a campaign to save all rainforest habitats.
Carlosnak nem kellett volna megennie azt a tintahalat. Most kiütések vannak az egész testén.
Carlos shouldn't have eaten that squid. Now there are rashes all over his body. Carlos shouldn't have eaten that squid. Now there are rashes all over his body.
Az összes születésnapi dekorációt egy nappal korábban csinálták azért, hogy ne az utolsó pillanatra hagyják azt az óriási munkát.
All birthday decorations were made one day earlier, so as not to leave all that work for the last minute. All birthday decorations were made one day earlier, so as not to leave all that work for the last minute.
Naponta potenciális vásárlók millióinak szállítanak reklámanyagokat világszerte.
Promotional materials are delivered daily to millions of potential customers worldwide. Promotional materials are delivered daily to millions of potential customers worldwide.
Nagy megtiszteltetés számomra, hogy erre a szerepre választottak ki.
It's a great honor for me to be chosen for this role. It's a great honor for me to be chosen for this role.
Nagyon óvatosnak kell lenniük a Sziklás hegységben, még ha rengeteg hegymászói tapasztalatuk is van.
They need to be really cautious in the Rocky Mountains, even if they have ample experience in hiking. They need to be really cautious in the Rocky Mountains, even if they have ample experience in hiking.
Míg szókincse nem olyan változatos, mint az osztálytársaié, a beszédkészsége kiemelkedő.
While her vocabulary is less diverse than her classmates, her speaking skills are outstanding. While her vocabulary is less diverse than her classmates, her speaking skills are outstanding.
A teniszjátékos tagadta, hogy valaha is használt volna teljesítménynövelő szereket.
The tennis player denied that he had ever used performance-enhancing drugs. The tennis player denied that he had ever used performance-enhancing drugs.
A friss diplomások érdeklődtek, hogy alkalmazunk-e üzleti elemzőket.
The graduates were inquiring if we were hiring any business analysts. The graduates were inquiring if we were hiring any business analysts.
Annak ellenére, hogy Barneynak jó kapcsolatai vannak, mégis részt kell vennie az állásinterjún.
In spite of the fact that Barney has good connections, he still has to do the job interview. In spite of the fact that Barney has good connections, he still has to do the job interview.
Az eső intenzitása lehetetlenné tette a környék útjain való közlekedést.
The intensity of the rain made driving in the area impossible. The intensity of the rain made driving in the area impossible.
Állásbörzéket országszerte tartanak egész évben.
Job fairs are held across the country throughout the year. Job fairs are held across the country throughout the year.
Könnyebb a projekteket menedzselni, ha kisebb kategóriákra osztod őket.
Projects are easier to manage when you divide them into smaller categories. Projects are easier to manage when you divide them into smaller categories.
Pénzt átutalni a legkönnyebben online pénzügyi szolgáltatókon keresztül lehetséges.
The simplest way to transfer money is via online payment systems. The simplest way to transfer money is via online payment systems.
Egy kis házi kedvenc segít az idősebb lakosoknak megbirkózni a magánnyal.
Having a pet helps senior citizens deal with loneliness. Having a pet helps senior citizens deal with loneliness.
Bizonyos emberek szerint nincs annál jobb érzés, mint jótékonysági munkát végezni kórházakban, templomokban vagy gyermektáborokban.
Some people believe that nothing feels better than doing charitable work in hospitals, churches, or children camps. Some people believe that nothing feels better than doing charitable work in hospitals, churches, or children camps.
A levegőszennyezés mindenféle felső légúti és keringési rendellenességhez vezethet.
Air pollution can lead to all kinds of respiratory and cardiovascular diseases. Air pollution can lead to all kinds of respiratory and cardiovascular diseases.
Nem kellene aggódnunk a föld víztartalékai miatt, ha nem pazarolnánk naponta annyit ebből az erőforrásból.
We wouldn't need to worry about the Earth's water supplies if we weren't wasting so much of this resource daily. We wouldn't need to worry about the Earth's water supplies if we weren't wasting so much of this resource daily.
A mentális egészség hanyatlásának egyik legjobb leküzdési módja egy idegen nyelv megtanulása.
One of the best coping mechanisms for declining mental health is learning a foreign language. One of the best coping mechanisms for declining mental health is learning a foreign language.